My English learning journey was completely changed the day I got the access to the internet. Before that, I would have been just like many students around me, buried in textbooks, fulfilling tests, and never speaking a word after tests. So in this video, I would like to discuss how I practice spoken English along the way with the help of the internet. Let's get started. First off, the most challenging and most fascinating tool, AI chatbots, something I did not have previously. AI voice models now have like pauses, breathes, and show emotion, just like talking to a real person. Here, I got ChatGPT ready. I got everything tested out. I just click on this icon, which would directly take me to the voice communicating model or something like that. And oh, okay. How's it going?
There, I'm doing great. Thanks for asking. How about you? How's everything on your end?
I'm doing pretty fine. Okay, here's the thing. I would like you to give me a topic and we can have a talk. Then before you give me some suggestion and improvement and feedback or something like that. And okay, here we go.
Got it. Let's get started. Here's a topic for you. Some people believe that living in a big city offers more opportunities than living in a small town. Do you agree or disagree? And why? Take your time and share your thoughts whenever you're ready.
The way I say it, the choices of city we live in is dependent on the two factors. First, our preference, and second, the condition. When we talk about preference, a lot of people have different preferences. Some people like the big cities where you can get the access to a lot of convenient infrastructure and all this. They think first thing, that's possible for having other individuals to our cities. A lot of people particularly intended to live in some places we don't get to choose the city we live in. That's my answer.
That was a great response. I covered both preference and condition, which is a really nice balanced approach. Here are a few suggestions. One, clarity and organization. You might want to break your ends. And for example, strengthen your argument. But overall, you did a fantastic job. Let me know if you want to try another topic or refine this one a bit more.
However, I realized that there is a major downside to this kind of talking. For those who struggle to speak even a few words, they will often break your flow, stop your mid-sentence, which is very annoying. That's why I gave the AI chatbox a 5-star difficulty, which is only accessible for advanced English users to maintain their daily speeches. Anyway, AI is powerful, but it is not for everyone, so we need something else. Next, I want to talk about a method that is more accessible than AI chatting, studying newsletters or some other authentic speaking passages. My study routine involves 3 steps: watching, dictation, and shadowing. And let me give you a step-by-step demonstration of how I do this. First off, I get videos of newsletters or TED Talks, preferably with subtitles going hand in hand with this video. But I do not turn the subtitles on as I watch these videos.
In the 2022 World Cup, while Argentina took home the title,
After that, I start to do some dictation with this text. I type down every word I can think of and I remember about the text as I listen to it. I will paste the subtitle of the original video to another dedicated space on that document so that I can do A and B side-by-side comparison between my dictation and the original subtitle. After all I tend to do a shadowing or many rounds of shadowing of that text to ensure that I have basically learned everything from that text.
wagered an estimated $35 billion, making it one of the most bet-on events in sports history. Over the past decade, sports gambling has become more popular than ever.
That was my casual routine for over a year and it was super fruitful. I read this method in 4-star in difficulty because I think it is still rather difficult and just suitable for learners with at least solid English foundation. We still need something else. Now let's talk about the 3-star level, talking to real people online. First, there is speaking partners. I used to have many conversations with people I knew via virtual calls or something like that during vacation or whatever. Sometimes they invited me, sometimes I invited them. I found myself being benefited a lot from these activities. So I suggest everyone out there go out and have a try. Seek one of your friends who you know and who you like to talk in English. But the challenge is that speaking partners are actually just at a similar English level to yours. If you're both advanced, great, you can have fluent conversations. But it is still communication, not targeted improvement. I think a teacher's help is still necessary, and that's why I would like to bring up today's sponsor, italki. Italki offers language courses in over 100 languages, featuring professional and experienced teachers. Whether your goal is test preparation, job related language skills, brain training, or language maintenance, you can always find a teacher who fits your needs. I got my teacher who is named Rod. He is a very well experienced teacher and he speaks a little Chinese, so he might be familiar with a little bit of Chinese culture. And at the same time, since I'm training myself to speak some kind of what I called um, American Chinglish accent, so native speakers from North America are my top choices. I personally use italki to keep my English speaking muscles strong. It's been a long time since I had a talk with a native speaker. I remember it was about 2 years ago. Since then, I had not talked to a native speaker, even though I have been studying this language for 10 years, from all the way back to 2014. And maybe I think my pronunciation is doing fine, but grammar is a big issue. So I really need someone with decent English proficiency to help me correct these issues. Yeah.
Sure. In fact, I can tell by listening to you that you have been studying English for quite some time. You
Yeah.
definitely seem like you're at like a good C1 level, kind of like advanced. Of course, even C1 people make mistakes occasionally,
Yeah.
you know. So, um, yeah, I do think that your pronunciation is doing very good, actually. In fact, you almost sound like a native speaker.
Since I wasn't born in an English speaking environment, most of my practice used to be solo practice. It worked, but it was still within my comfort zone, talking about familiar topics. The downside of such a practice style was revealed by my poor IELTS speaking score. Basically, all I'm doing uh, mostly is self talking. And
Mm,
in this case, a lot of errors and mistakes when it comes to grammar cannot be identified all by myself.
mm,
The downside of this kind of learning style unfolded when I was participating in IELTS test, and
mhm,
I got a bind 8. It was a decent
mm,
score, but I only got a bind 7 in my speaking sessions. When I reflect on this issue, I realized that it's gotta be some kind of problem about that. And when I was looking back, I felt like maybe it's because I don't have a lot of experience and time talking with a real person. That must be a huge setback. I don't know if it's a correct word to use.
sure,
Um,
sure.
yeah, I was doing self talking all the time. So maybe the topic I've been talking about generally is within my comfort zone. When I got a topic that I had literally no experience, I got
Mm,
stalked. And that was
yeah.
exactly what
Mm,
happened when I fulfilled the part 2 session, which was about storytelling. I remembered I got a topic that required me to talk about someone that I like to talk in a party. But the problem is that
uh-huh.
I'm not a party person. I'm not a party guy. I don't literally go to party. I got
Mm.
stalked. Oh my god. Oh my god. I can't I can't think of a guy.
Like a person who you like to talk to at a party,
Yeah, at a
right?
party.
Okay, sure. I know that IELTS is tricky like that because some of
Yeah.
their, from what I know about it, a lot of their topics are kind of sort of out of nowhere. Like
Yeah,
it'll be about something random,
absolutely.
basically.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I understand that can be like a really big disappointment. Although I know that for a lot of these exams, most people don't do very good on their first try. you know, because it's kind of like a new thing, and it's a very like a well, it's a very unique structure
Yeah.
to the test, and a lot of people do better after they've taken it like twice or three times,
Mm.
you know. And it would probably be the same for you, I imagine. When I took the standardized test here in the US,
Mhm.
uh, I took it three times, and the first time I didn't do so well, and then the second time I did better, and then the third time I did even better.
I started learning English at 14, not exactly an early start. And even now, despite speaking daily and making videos in English, I still make mistakes in my spoken language. The tricky part is that the errors I don't even notice. On italki, my teachers can point them out and correct them in real time. I would say repetition is the highlight of my English learning journey,
Hmm.
especially for the first 3 years of my English learning journey from my second year in middle school to the 1 year in high school when I
Oh,
was
first year.
oh first year in high school. Oh
Hmm.
wow, I didn't even notice that. I didn't even I
Oh,
mentioned one. Ah.
because a 1 year in high school could be any of those
Oh
years,
yeah.
right?
It's beyond language skills, the biggest benefit is perspective. English has always been my tool for international communication, but on italki, I can talk to native speakers, asking directly about how they are really talking about in real life.
In fact, I do find that a lot of my Chinese students use what I would call like writing vocabulary when they speak
Oh,
sometimes.
mm,
So
yeah,
because they kind of I think they kind of learned how to read and write in English, but they don't really have much experience speaking with like native speakers or
mm,
anything like that. And so for that reason, sometimes their vocabulary can sound a little unnatural, not strictly wrong, but just kind of like not how a native speaker would say it,
yeah.
you know? Like maybe a native speaker would use a phrasal verb instead of like a big $5 word, you know?
What I love most about italki is the freedom. Freedom of time. You can actually book lessons whenever you and your teachers are available. Freedom of location. Since everything is online, geography is not a barrier. Freedom of budget. Choose your price range and the platform filters teachers accordingly. It is far more affordable than inviting someone to your home and to teach your English speaking. Actually, italki offers you a pay-as-you-go feature where you don't have to spend a lot of money on a series of courses, a lot of consequential courses. You can actually book a lesson and finish that lesson, and whenever you have a desire for having another course or having another class, you can just book another lesson and off you go. This is why I like italki, no pressure.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I love it. Freedom. So if you also like to improve your English a bit using italki, you can click through the link below in the description to start your language learning journey. Buy $10 and you get $5 for free for your first lesson using my exclusive promote code, which I will leave in the comment or description below. You can check that out. The discounts are only available for the first 50 users. Let's move on to 2-star difficulty, materials that aren't super easy but still manageable. They may not be very fun, but they are useful for building skills. First, slow speech materials. A classic example is VOA Special English News or BBC Learning English, if you prefer British accent. It is essentially a slow version of news, but with a clear and standard English speaking, spoken at a pace most English learners can follow. If you like, you can treat it the same way I work with the standard newsletters, like I mentioned in the 4-star section. Second, teaching channels where the content is in English, whether the teacher is a native or non-native speaker. One I recommend is English Learning with Bob the Canadian on YouTube or whatever the platform that is. I suggest doing a shadowing of channels like this. They speak slowly but standard English, but just imitate them, not dictation or something like that. Third, English teaching podcasts. These can even be in your native language. In China, we have many such shows. Some feature a native speaker and a local teacher discussing idioms, phrases, and grammar in ways that is both accessible and practical. My personal favorite is Open Language, which I've been listening to since 2015. I picked up loads of phrases and terms in this show. Sometimes I learned them so much so I can use these phrases naturally in my daily speeches. Finally, 1-star speaking practice for pure beginners. We're talking about someone who knows fewer than 1,000 words. Someone who scored, say, 40 out of 150 points, like I once did. These resources are extremely important because they help build confidence. And confidence, in my view, is one of the most valuable assets a learner could ever have. Many good speakers become good because they first believed they could do it, that they could learn English well. On the other hand, many English learners quit because of the wrong materials. It all starts with interest. When I was little, I loved documentaries in history and geography. I watched a lot of Chinese language programs on TV. Later, with the internet access, I stumbled upon English language videos like this. Even though I barely understood them, I couldn't stop watching them. I loved learning something outside of textbooks, something that my teachers never taught. I noticed one thing that made my journey different was that I never binged. I would watch the same video that I liked again, and again. Somehow I started to cite and imitate their speeches. This is the first time I found myself speaking with full sentences instead of fragments or just words. I started learning purely out of interest, and I believe that the most important thing for beginners is to find what excites them, not just what is easy. Okay, this is the end of the video. I'm Shawn English here. Remember, happy learning. I will see you in next video. Bye-bye.